A lot of the abuses by Israeli soldiers take place at checkpoints. Since 2001, groups of us have gone out twice a day, 7 days a week, to document the little humiliations and detentions that take place at the checkpoints. In some cases, where there are severe intimidation or gross violation of human rights, we try to intervene. In addition to our monitoring work, we file written complaints on intolerable cases. At the end of each day, we put our reports on our website, which is called Checkpoint Watch. That's the name of our organisation. There are about 500 of us now. We're all Israeli women, most of us older, and we all do this as volunteers. It's not easy, because we come in for a lot of abuse from Israelis, particularly settlers, the people living in Israeli settlements in the occupied territories. Though the ones who give us trouble are the religious fundamentalist settlers, who see themselves as the rightful owners of a biblical land.
I'm warning you. If you film me, I'll break your camera. But just go away, just get out of here. Get in your car and go away. You really have a nerve. You're jeopardizing the security of the Jewish people for these murderers. Go be with the Arabs in Nablus. Go, fuck the Arabs. You're all sluts, all the watch women.
Are you aware that you are interfering with it?
These soldiers are here doing their job, devoting hours in this heat. What disgusting people you are. The army's protecting you, and this is what you do?
You settled in an occupied area outside the borders of the state of Israel. Because of you, soldiers need to stand at the checkpoints in the heat and the cold. Because of you, thousands of Palestinians are stuck at checkpoints for hours every day and become filled with despair and rage.
My son Khaled was having difficulty breathing. I called a neighbour who has a car. With my wife and the baby, we set off immediately for the hospital in Ramallah. It was quicker than waiting for an ambulance to come all the way to the village. It was just before midnight. Khaled had previously had attacks like this, and we took him to hospital, and there he was put under the oxygen tent, and he always got better. We arrived at the Atara checkpoint at 12:45 a.m. From there, it was another 10 minutes to the hospital. The soldiers stopped us.
At 1 a.m. I went into labour. We took a car to Jericho. At the checkpoint, they wouldn't let me pass. We were there from 1 a.m. till 7 a.m. I started to hemorrhage. The Israeli army refused to let us through.
I told them that my baby was sick and urgently needed to get to the hospital in Ramallah. I spoke to them in Hebrew. They asked for our IDs. The driver and I gave ours, but my wife had left hers at home in the hurry. I told the soldiers, and they said we could not pass without her ID. I begged them to let us pass. They looked in the car and saw that there was nothing, and that the baby had problems breathing and his limbs were trembling. I told the soldiers that every minute, every second mattered, that the baby needed oxygen urgently. They told us to wait, and I kept pleading with them. Then the baby died. It was 1:05 a.m. I told the soldiers. I shone a torch into the car and saw that the baby was not moving anymore. And they told us that we could pass. We drove to the hospital anyway. There it was confirmed that Khaled had died. He was 6 months old.
My husband begged them in vain. They aimed fire at us, but still wouldn't let us pass. I continued to plead. My husband told them he was going to leave me there and go home. The soldier replied that he couldn't leave me. Finally, he said that we could pass on foot, but no ambulances or cars would be allowed through. We had to walk for over 2 kilometers. I collapsed from exhaustion and bleeding. I couldn't walk anymore. I asked my husband to just leave me there to die, and I fainted. When I regained consciousness, it was around noon. I asked the doctor for my baby. He told me that she died. This is my story.
Since 2000, 68 women have been forced to give birth at checkpoints. The Israeli authorities contend that
this regime of closures and restrictions is necessary to prevent Palestinians from coming into Israel to carry out suicide bombings and other attacks.
However, according to an Amnesty International report published last year, virtually all the 600 or so closures, checkpoints, gates, blocked roads, and most of the barrier wall, are located inside the West Bank, not between Israel and the West Bank. They curtail or prevent movement between Palestinian towns and villages, splitting and isolating Palestinian communities, separating Palestinians from their agricultural land, hampering access to work, schools, health facilities and relatives, and destroying the Palestinian economy.
These restrictions of movement have increased in proportion to the increase of Israeli settlements in the West Bank. Mohammed Jarrett, from the Badil Resource Center for Palestinian Residency and Refugee Rights.
We thought the Oslo Peace Agreement in 1993 opened doors, but since then there has been an escalation of settlers from 150,000 to 480,000, a 200% increase, contravening the roadmap and the 4th Geneva Convention, which states that
the occupying power shall not transfer parts of its own civilian population in the territory it occupies. A village called Monolouges near Bethlehem is enclosed by the barrier wall. The mayor of Monolouges.
This is not a security wall, it's a political wall. To be honest, Israel is worshipping a new golden calf. It's called security.
In the village of Isbat Salman, the Kuzma family has been cut off from most of their nearby land by the barrier wall since the end of 2002 and can no longer farm it. The younger family members have not been granted permits to access the family land, and the distance from the family home to the gates and then onto their land is not manageable for the elderly members who could obtain a permit.
Even for the farmers who have been able to obtain permits to reach their land, access is severely restricted. The gates through which authorised farmers can pass are far apart and only open 2 or 3 times a day for about half an hour.
According to the Israeli authorities, the wall is a defensive measure designed to block the passage of terrorists, weapons and explosives into the state of Israel. Its sole purpose, they say, is
to provide security.
Amnesty International.
The barrier wall is being constructed on a circuitous route to include as many of the settlements and water resources as possible, and to ensure that 85% of settlers will end up on the Israeli side. The unlawful appropriation of Palestinian land for Israeli settlements and bypass roads, and of crucial resources such as water, has had a devastating impact on the local Palestinian population, including their rights to an adequate standard of living, to adequate food, water and housing, to the highest attainable standard of health, to education and to work. In July 2004, the International Court of Justice declared the wall illegal.